All right. So I would like to warmly welcome all of you in the next episode of the Into the Life Talks, where we bring honest conversation about self-exploration and change. But we also talk about modalities and practices that supports integrity and coherence in life. And today we have something a little bit different because my guest today has been doing breath work for over 32 years. And over 22 of those as a facilitator, which means he has sat with of thousands of people as they moved through the most real and most difficult layers of their own interior life. He holds a master's in psychology and transformational education. And in 2011, he founded a nonprofit dedicated to supporting individual, community, and global healing through breathwork and community building for deep inner work. He also co-created the Neurodynamic Breathwork Facilitator training program that has shaped a whole generation of facilitators. He's a professional astrologer with over 30 years of experience. He brings not only the psychology of transformation, but also a cosmological frame that I personally love, and the ability to read where we are in the larger cycle. And I'm also very happy to have this conversation because it's my dear friend. And I feel like we've been preparing for this conversation on a number of occasions of our private sessions and talks about life and change and transformation and many, many other topics. So I want to warmly welcome you, Glenn Girlando. It's great to
Right.
have you here. Did I miss anything? Is there something that you wish to add to this
Oh my
intro?
God, are you kidding me? I'm just like, who is this guy? Yeah, no, I'm delighted to be here. It has been a long time coming.
Hmm, I agree. And we are going to talk today about hope in the turbulent times, and we will see where this conversation will take us. And we will talk not only about the hope as an idea, but also as a practice and how to embody the hope in those challenging times that we are living currently. So I want to warmly welcome you. And Glenn, before we will go any further and before we will start talking about hope, I would love to hear your honest take about where we are right now in life. And you've been doing this work for over 30 years. You've sat with people through some of the most difficult interior passages in their lives. A human being, how the human being can move. And when you look at the where we are as a humanity today, right now, what do you see? And whenever you're thinking about this like phrase of like turbulent times, what comes to you?
Wow. Just what I expected. A really good question. That's gonna make me sit for a second to tune into what's there to be said. Um, uh, nobody's asked me this before in that way. It's interesting because I feel this so profoundly. I'm somebody who just has a deep sensitivity to the world around me, and but I see it not just in my immediate world, but I'm aware of the whole world in this in the earth and all the cultures of the world, and it just feels like things are the pot is being stirred right now in some deep ways, and I think it's impossible to be a human being right now without feeling that there's something happening that is beyond the normal. Like there's something deeper that's catalyzing change, and it can really, I mean, in my own experience, it can be. I mean, if I open to that part of me, I can get very afraid. There's a lot of fear that's involved, and I feel like that's not everybody's acknowledging it, maybe, but I just feel like that fear is underlying everybody. There's an uncertainty, um, the uncertainty of change, and what are things going to look like? It's like the whole world order is being shifted, and it's one of the it's well. So I guess to stay focused on your question, I definitely feel that in the breathwork participants that attend my sessions. There's definitely I don't know. I guess I this is just my own perception, but I just feel like there's the level of anxiety. If there's a continuum of anxiety in the collective psyche, it's higher than it's ever been, and it's affecting people's breathwork sessions. It's that may not necessarily be in their conscious mind, but I just feel like there's a deep uncertainty. Um, Now, I personally have, one of my core beliefs is that the essence of life, it all comes down to that there's always this paradox. And part of that is I'm a Libra astrologically, so I kind of experience the world through paradox. But I definitely feel like I've got two sides of me. And so I'm imagining that maybe that applies to everybody on some level, but I only you can decide that. But for me, I've got I feel like we're humans living in a body, but we are simultaneously spirits, souls that are we're both embodied and transcended. We have a foot in both worlds at all times, and so that kind of shapes how I look at everything. And so I have, as a human, as a being, a human being, I have two simultaneous experiences going on at all times. And the human side is scared as, can I swear? Scared as fuck. Like scared as fucking hell. I mean, if I go in, I have to, there's like a, uh, there's like a body of energy of fear that I have to constantly work with. And breathwork is one of the great tools for that to help kind of release the pressure cooker valve of all that fear. Because as long as I think that fear energy can distract from what's the deeper truth, because then on the other side of me, the spirit side, the soul side, I absolutely trust that we're exactly where we need to be. As painful as it may be on the human side, there's this simultaneously this things are unfolding exactly the way they need to, and that there is a deeper consciousness evolution unfolding. And like you can't have a birth without going through labor, and we're just in a freaking intense labor phase right now. And I wish I knew how long it was going to last, but I have no idea. And that's what's scary on the human side. So that's how I perceive it. That's how I experience it. And you know, I can't say how other people want to interpret that, but definitely when I'm doing breath work, I'm feeling this anxiety. And I think since the topic we're getting into is one that's near to my heart, hope in turbulent times. I feel like an essential, like we have to allow the fear. We can't deny that the fear is there, but at the same time, on the spiritual side, on the deeper side, we have to create space to allow ourselves to remember our deepest soul truth. I mean, I could just start rambling on a whole lot of topics here, so I don't want to. I want to make sure I can keep going, or if you want to stop and talk about anything,
Mm,
let me put it back to you. But
mm,
I do feel like learning to align with that deeper spiritual soul level knowing.
mm,
If there's one thing, the most powerful lesson I've learned in breathwork in 35 years, it's to trust.
mm,
Trust that there's a deeper intelligence inside of me. And over the years of living this paradigm of trust that also exists in the outer world. And we all have it. It's just that we get disconnected from it. There's so many things in our day-to-day lives that distract us from that from the present. I would call it presencing with self, slowing down the mind, tuning into that deeper intuitive knowing. It's there in all of us. And that is the core lesson of breathwork. It's remembering that and learning to build the neural pathways that lubricate your capacity to access that deeper, slower stillness that is way beyond the mind. And that's basically where I'm at with it all.
I guess we can finish here, We just put the full stop, and finish because we what you shared is so profound, and I can so relate and so feel into your words, because I hear you and I feel like this is also the moment because like you said, that this fear is so present and we can observe it in so many different settings and even by talking to people, working with people, right? And I feel like I really believe that in the crisis, in the challenging time, we can see it as some sort of like initiation and a possibility of change, right? So there's like this friction, this traction, and there is like a possibility to choose from the place of love and trust or from the place of fear, right? And I feel like this can kind of like indicate where we are moving forward as individuals, but also as a collective, and how we serve, how we are, how we like show up for this world, for other human beings, for our loved ones, what we want to contribute to this reality, how we want to build this reality in a different way, in a different form, right? And I, like you said, I really believe that this comes to this like presence with yourself and really feeling your heart and recognizing what is true and practicing. This is the word of the year for me, the discernment. Really like practicing this
Discernment.
discernment, like
Yeah.
deciding what is in alignment with me, what is my true, what is like in the resonance with me right now, and in which way I want to move forward, right? As we create, because I see it as a possibility to create something new, create something like a new paradigm for all of us, for us, but also for the humanity and future generations as well.
Yeah. I think that's a great word, discernment. I mean, in some level, every moment there's an opportunity to show discernment. And I think you know that I'm deeply aligned with this idea. I think on some level it's just such a simple. It seems overly simplistic. It's almost like this couldn't be, but to me, it really, on some level, captures some core truth about humanity. This idea of love versus fear
Hmm.
in every single moment.
Yeah.
We all have a choice. In
Hmm.
any moment, we get we get hijacked. All of us have dealt with painful things in life. Many people have dealt with trauma in childhood and are working through that. And those childhood patterns of however we learned that they become our stories, and then when our stories get triggered, we get activated and we get hijacked by these old stories and old emotions and old beliefs, and then we contract into fear. And let me just tell you, if you put one person in fear in the room with another person in fear and you have them interact, it's not going to go well. They're both
Hmm.
going to be acting not from their authentic self, but from their sort of locked in old locked neuronal pathway, like traumatized selves. And um, but in any moment though, both of those people, all of us have this. If we can stop and pause, take a breath, and remember, wait, this is my old lubricated neural pathway self. I'm here to create new neural pathways that where I can remember love, where I can remember trust, where I can remember expansiveness. Remember that there's a larger intelligence that I'm a part of, that I'm working with. And as we start to make that shift, I think our being just softens. And
Hmm.
when the more relaxed we are, the more clear we think. And so we can see things more clearly. and then again, the word that I'm using lately, just because of some of the research I'm doing, is source, connecting to
Mhm.
source. And I'm kind of aware that not everybody resonates with that word, and I never really did myself, but I'm trying to find the right word to capture this deeper inner guidance. I mean, some people might call it soul, some might call it source, some might call it your connection to God or to spirit or to the universe or to the creative guiding intelligence within or whatever you want to call it. But for now, I'm going to call it source. And I think as we move on that spectrum into love, into expansiveness, that's sort of directly correlated with deepening into our connection with source, our own knowing, capital K knowing.
Mm.
That's not small K. We've got small K knowledge on the we know, we think we know, but the
Mm.
capital K is to me where we really know.
Mm. I
And that
love that.
love,
Yeah.
yeah, the love versus fear. I just
Mm.
that's a guiding principle of every moment of my life. Wait, am
Yeah.
I choosing love right now?
Yeah.
Am I, or oh, how do I get there?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, Glenn. I love what you shared. And I feel like there's so much, that we can go with so many different directions, right? There's like
I
so
know.
much like juiciness in what you just shared. And I feel like with love also comes, this way of being, of like holding oneself with compassion and non-judgment, right? And you also mentioned about, so I feel like because sometimes whenever I'm having those conversations, it all sounds like easy and simple. Yeah, just connect to the source, connect to the love. But at the same time, as you mentioned, we are in the labor, and labor can be messy, can be very chaotic, can be like painful in many ways, right? And you already mentioned perinatal experiences, and we are both familiar with perinatal matrices of the work of Stan Grove, right? There's like another, you know, cosmos that we can open, but having in mind this labor, that we are as a humanity, as a collective in the labor, we are like giving birth, and we are like, I like the expression that you used once in one of our conversations, that we are like a midwives of this like birth process. And whenever we are like, if we'll use this metaphor and we will stay with it, and you also mentioned about this cycle of death and rebirth that we are all going through, right? So what do you think actually needs to die right now whenever we are like thinking about current, collective state, and what needs to die in how we organize, in how we lead, in how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to one another, how we relate to Mother Earth? What's the
Yeah.
dev that we need to like hold, what's the dev process that we need to face, from your perspective?
Wow. This stuff it brings up emotion for me because it's so alive in the world right now, and I just love your questions. What needs to die? Well, the word that came to mind as you were saying that was selfishness,
Mm,
like letting go of this identifying with me, mine. It's all about I need to just protect my own self. I don't care what the fuck is going on with other people. As long as I got mine, baby,
mm,
I'm fine. I think, I mean, there's so many levels of that, but whether that's on a national level, we have our, but I mean, okay, I'm going to go back to my idea that there's the human side and the transcendent and the spiritual side. And I do think it's normal. I'm not trying to judge that we all are in this world. I need to clarify something. Like I'm not suggesting that we need to deny the human side and become the transcendent and that we should put down like I actually ultimately believe that we're here to do both. And that's what's so tricky is how do we find our individual selfish purpose in the world? What is our role? What do we need to own in this world? What are the gifts we have to offer? And then so that's what are the lessons we need to learn in the physical world that we couldn't learn if we were a disembodied soul without a not without living in the world. But on the other side, how do we walk with a foot in both worlds?
Mhm.
Uh and so my mind, oh wait, well, went about three different directions right there.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna remind me what was the initial topic that
Where we started,
yeah, in this particular thread.
well, we started with the
Oh,
whole
where do we start with what
with the
needs to
death, yeah.
change?
What needs
Yeah,
to. Hmm.
right. And for me, the word that came up was selfishness.
Hmm.
So I'm not trying to say throw away all selfishness. We need to have it, but I do think that it's the shadow of selfishness. It's the over attachment to self that needs to change. Like until we can start thinking, okay, one of my a great writer that I really influenced me in the way back when, this is a guy named Sharif Abdullah, and he um he had this idea that um that we're on this consciousness evolution journey, and that right now we are Homo sapiens and we are who we are. But that if we're going to survive ultimately long term as a species, we have to evolve to the next level, which he framed as Homo sapien wholeness.
Hmm.
And for me, that just really resonated. And I know I've seen other people call it different things, but that if we're going to survive, what needs to die is the over selfishness, and what needs to be born is this recognition that we are simultaneously all one, that we're all connected, that
Hmm.
I am the same as the person in wherever in the poor country in Africa, in South America, Central America, Southeast Asia, anywhere in the world where there's somebody who's not eating properly or
Yeah.
is struggling or in pain. It's not just, oh, that's interesting. That is us. And
Hmm.
so until we can, I mean, that's the ultimate to me. And when we can interact with recognition that we all are we can't separate ourselves. We're all one as long as one person suffers, we all suffer.
Hmm.
So I think I'm not sure if that was clear, but
Hmm.
that's sort of how I
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah.
I sometimes actually think that it's not going to happen until extraterrestrials show up, because only then will we finally be able to say, wait, whoa, maybe then we'll recognize that we're human first. But of course, then we'll start projecting our evils onto the extraterrestrials, and then we'll have to evolve to the next level. But one thing at a time.
That's for another episode. But
Yeah.
I hear you, and I'm just like, whenever I'm like listening to you, I'm thinking also about the grief because there is a real grief in letting go. There is a real grief in a moment whenever the old map is not working anymore and the identity collapse and the sense how the things were collapse doesn't work. And I feel like we are in this moment, right? Of like this like friction, but at the same time going through a lot of fear. And I know from myself, and I was like experiencing myself, my own like, process not a long time ago. And I've been remembered like how painful that can be to go through this like identity shift and pieces that are being like going through like this like shedding process. And I'm like thinking out loud, how do you hold oneself? How do you hold individual? How the individual can hold himself, herself in that grief, but without rushing through the grief, leaving in the stuckness and kind of like making this grief and this all the identity as you and being like craving to it, but also like not bypassing the grief and just holding oneself in this process of death, rebirth, grieving, going through all kinds of emotions, because that's the work, I believe. Facing it, being with that, with compassion, without judgment, and as we often say, you need to feel it to heal it. And there can be so much resistance. And we both are like not only like facilitators, but we are practitioners, and we know how how differently it can go. We are like in a different moments of life. Sometimes, yes, we can today say trust the process, surrender to the process, because we've been practicing and building those muscles for a period of time, right? And still sometimes it can be tricky. So I wonder what would you say to people? And I believe this is what I'm hearing, at least, that there's like many out there not facing the fear, not only facing anxiety, but also this grief. They are grieving the old world. And I'm not only talking about AI and this like tremendous technology shift that we are going through and how much resistance there can be. And at the same time, I feel like we are in a very fast river and we are trying to hold the edges. And the more, again, the way, as we say it, right? The more you resist it, the more it persists and creates even more tension. So I know that like this is like a broad question, but I'm thinking like how to swim in those waters to release those edges and kind of like just flow with the river of life, with trust and holding yourself in whatever is arising.
It's a great question, and I love it too because especially because you know we can step away from all this the high philosophy about what's really happening in the world, but when it comes down to it, we all have to deal with ourselves, and our own emotions and our journey and our
Daily life.
daily life, and that's really what it comes down to. So I think it's really good to like to go here, like what does it mean to live in day-to-day reality and to work with this, all the things that are unfolding. And grief, I mean, oh man, I think there's so much unexpressed grief. I don't think we even come close to acknowledging the depth of grief for the loss of the rainforest, for the extinction of certain of different animals, for you know the changes in climate and so many other things. And there are people that are attuned to that and feel that deeply. I know that, but I think the average person has no idea that they're carrying it around. And so I think there's a lot of layers to this, to that grief idea. And whether it's grief or anxiety or anger sometimes, because I think anger can be very connected with grief. Some the empowering side of grief. But I think the challenge is how do you feel the emotions of day-to-day life without being the emotions, without identifying with the emotions, to allow okay, so one of the things that I often will say in breathwork is that if like there's a job description of coming into a breathwork session, your job is to give full permission to what energetically whatever's coming up. And that could be grief, it could be anger, it could be fear, but or it could be it could be something somatic, but to give full permission to whatever's coming up without any judgment and allow it to be as big as it wants to be. And that's the pathway to healing, is to let those energies come through you. We'll often say in breathwork too, if it's on its way up, it's a gift. That means it's on its way out. So rather than seeing, if we could make that shift of rather than seeing, I know this is not easy, but to make a shift, start to make a shift of recognizing that the grief or the anger or whatever it is that's coming up, well, you're not that. But if it's coming up, it's actually a gift because it's trying to emerge. It's trying to teach you something. Anger teaches empowerment, and grief is a recognition of our aliveness and the fact that we're here. And there's a lot of things. The more we only live to the degree that we face our pain, and So there's a great gift in allowing ourselves to feel these things as we can live in a more alive way. Um, it harkens to one of my favorite quotes that I've come across in the last 5 years. I know you've heard me say this many times. It's from Krishnamurti, and it's so simple, but this changed my whole spiritual practice in the last 5 years. He says, "Don't mind what is happening."
Mhm.
And I had to do a double take, like, whoa, what about thoughts? How do I not mind thoughts? Or
Mhm.
how do I not mind grief? But I think the mind, this is for me the trick, and this is why more and more I feel like the breath work that you and I practice is aligned with, highly aligned with the mindfulness practice. Because we're learning to let the emotions, to let the feelings, to let the body express and come through us, but without minding it. We can be it, we can experience it, but we're not it. And that includes our thoughts. And this has been the one that's been really tricky and very fascinating for me to practice, is learning to, even my thoughts, I'm gonna notice them. Like, oh, I see you thoughts. I see your stories. I see all the things you want to believe, but I know that you're not source. You're not my deepest connection to spirit. You're just my mind. The mind is not where deep truth comes from. You're all the stories. So whatever stories come up, just let them hang out, but don't become them. Don't get caught up in them. Let the energy move through you. And I just think, you know, all the years of doing this of breath work, the two core things we talk about all the time, two core principles that drive the breath work we do: trust, surrender. And to me, those really have become the cornerstone of how I approach my life. And it's how I approach grief and all the emotions that come up. Can I trust that the grief is there for a reason?
Mhm.
And if I try to suppress it, it's only going to get clogged and stuck down. And we don't want it stuck in there. There is an ending for people that have been spinning their wheels or feel like their grief is never ending or this or that. But I mean, we signed up on some level to be in this world, and we just have to, we can't, the more, you mentioned what you resist persists. If we resist what's actually true, that we have grief, then it's only going to get worse. Then we're going to get in our head and have judgments about it. So the more we can just allow and don't mind it, just it's energy, let the energy through. And then the amazing thing is, when you stop resisting it and let the grief or the anger or the body tensions come through and express, and without attachment to him, then you come out on the other side and you're just like, oh, I feel lighter.
Mhm.
Oh, I feel more relaxed. My heart is more open. My mind is less anxious. My body's more relaxed. And and I can be more present, and I'm more capable of connecting to my deeper truth.
Mhm.
So the turbulence of those emotions, it's something, I don't think there's any human being who would say, oh, yeah, sign me up for tons of intense emotions in life. But it's just the reality. As long as we resist it, it's only going to be worse. So just let it through you. And eventually and this is what my work in breathwork, I believe, has taught me, it will clear,
Mhm.
but you have to trust
Mhm.
and get out of your mind about it. So,
Mhm.
so letting go of selfishness, and then, but I mean, I guess in a way, this is the selfish side of life. It's being with the human side.
Mhm.
So hopefully that somewhere in there
Mhm.
responded to your question.
I love it. And it reminds me about this expression that we use, that it really is about allowing the full human catastrophe. And I'm being reminded as I'm listening to you, to one of these Buddhist teachers who replied to this question, but what do you do with the pain? And he said, I agree. And it's really about allowing and giving oneself a permission, right? To feel, to meet where you are and to surrender to the river of life. And I'm kind of like being reminded about those like roller coasters, and I know that they are very popular in America whenever you go very fast. And I feel like we are on this like fast roller coaster right now, very fast train, and you can either like be like right, or you can surrender. You
Yeah.
can like put your hands up and kind of like scream, but at the same time enjoy it on the way somehow, right? Enjoy the view, enjoy the landscape as much as you
Yes,
can.
that's a good analogy. You know, we can't it I've just never personally found that fighting what's coming up from inside of me helps. It only makes things worse.
Yeah.
And especially when the more I resist, the more I don't want to deal with it. Usually the deeper I'm holding something, the more and the deeper change that can happen if I'm willing to face it, willing to feel it, willing to dive into it and face whatever my ego mind doesn't want to deal with.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm also an astrologer, and it's the Pluto side of life. It's the shadow side. Pluto in astrology is Hades. It rules the underworld. It's the archetype of the underworld. And for me, I always feel like Pluto represents we all have a basement.
Hmm.
And what is the basement? The basement is where we throw all the shit we don't want to deal with. We're like, fuck, I can't. Okay, yeah, I've got grief, or yeah, I was bullied when I was 15, or yeah, I went through this or that. I don't want to, I'm busy, man. I got too much going on. I've got my own kids now. I can't deal with that. So what do? We can't just get rid of it. Like,
Hmm.
throw it in the basement. I'll deal with it one day. But the problem is, when's that one day? Sooner or
Hmm.
later, Pluto transits come around and say, it's time for a basement cleaning. We can't, in the lesson there is from the astrology perspective is face it consciously and intentionally, choose to face it when it comes up, or if you don't face it, it'll come and become your karma in the outer world. I mean, that's a whole I went in a whole different direction. I didn't, but it's kind of like we're as painful as it might be, we're much better off just allowing these feelings to come through and trusting the process, as we say.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there is so much to say to what you shared so profoundly. And, I'm like being reminded again about one of the conversations that we had. And I was going through like some challenging moment. And I remember when you shared with me, can you love the stuckness? Can you just be with your stuckness? And I was like, I'm gonna rip off your head. But it really is about that because it's not everything is those emotions, those waves are like temporary, and whatever we are going through as a humanity right now, it's also a wave, a temporary wave that will change and transform, even though it might feel like a very intense purge. I would say, as one might say, but it's here because we are maybe ready to face it. Maybe we are ready to clean those basements as you described, right? To do the
I
cleaning.
Yeah, I mean, I I agree. I mean, it's just it is what's here. It doesn't help us to deny it and pretend it's not there. Um we just have to flow. We have to surf what's in front of us and if there's another thing, if there's one of the major lessons that astrology has taught me, everything is cyclical. There's cycles of life, and some of the cycles are very short. There's the moon cycle, the moon or the ascendant changes signs every 2 hours. It's like the energy of life on some level goes through a transformation every 2 hours. But on the other side of this extreme, Pluto, the cycle of Pluto takes 248 years. So it's a very slow cycle of the heat, the shadow side of us. And then Uranus, 84 years, Saturn, 30 years. There's all these cycles. And there's some fascinating books out there that look at the cycles throughout history and like every time what happens every time Pluto and Uranus meet up in the sky. And it only happens like every 120 years or so, give or take. And what has happened every time that's happened? Well, it by looking and learning from historically the past, it does give us some clues about the energetics and dynamics of what's happening. But I think that's a topic for another discussion one day.
Mm. Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
yeah, go
but
on.
there are cycles.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
this cycle that we're in now will change
hmm
eventually,
yeah,
sooner or later.
it will
And
transform eventually, right? And it's like with the birth process and those different stadium of the birth that we are going through, right? And what I would add to this, and it's I feel like this was for me a big learning as well, not only in breathwork life or some with some other work that I do, is that you can't go ahead of life, you can't go ahead of the cycle, you can't go ahead of the process, and I, even now, sometimes it requires a lot of like mindfulness and practice for me to kind of like surrender and be with whatever is, because I have this tendency, I used to have it, of like rushing things. Come on, next, right? And it teaches me that there is like this divine wisdom in life and in those cycles as well. And our ego mind can create different narratives and judgments around it, that, oh, you're not as fast as you used to be, or whatever that might be, right? But to me, it's also about honoring those cycles, that we can try to push it and force it and try to like make it happen. But I learned that you just can't go ahead of the life. There's like this divine wisdom of the soul and this like perfectly orchestrated divine mm, matrix that we are living in a way, right? And for me, it was like also like a big humbling experience as well, to honor where I am, love where I am, and find the joy in that. And even if it's like, it's not necessarily what I want it to be, but still find those glimpses of joy in that moment, because it will change, it will transform, it will be something different.
this too shall pass.
Hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's all just it. How many human beings have their own ideas about what they want in life, and how many of us get attached to those stories? Probably every single one of us. And
Mm.
we need to have visions and stories about who we want to, what we want to become, and what we plan to do in the world. But I think it's when we get attached to those stories, and then we start resisting what things that contradict those stories. But life is doesn't work that way. I think it's this constant flow of information. And if we start coasting on an old story that hasn't been updated, and we have new emotions coming in that are like contradicting that, we have to allow that. It's just information. And so then we adapt that our story to the new information, and then we continue to walk in aliveness. But if we are resisting those feelings because it doesn't fit my story about what I want, it's not what I'm looking for. No, that's not me. Nope, nope. I don't feel then, or just even have stories of, you know, I don't want to deal with all those feelings. And I'm just going to get, a lot of people are afraid they're going to get engulfed by it, gets lost in it and never come out. There's a lot of issues and fears, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. The more we can just allow whatever's there, trust that there's an intelligence, trust that there's a wisdom, and we have free will, but we also have, I guess, fate and karma. I'm not sure how. I'm still kind of working through that one, but we can't deny what's true. We have to start there in order to change and move in new directions. And I just think you're
Mm.
so right on. Look, the more we can trust that there's this deeper wisdom, not only to our own internal process, but even, as you said, sometimes one of the things you learn when you start living this way, when you do the breath work in this non-directive way, little by little, you learn to trust, but also that things that you have no idea might be meaningful right now a year from now, suddenly you might be like, oh my God, that painful 3 months when I was just couldn't move because I was so stuck and frustrated. That actually would, if that had never happened, it would have, this other door would never have opened. And I needed to go through that. It's so hard to actually, when you're in the middle of that
Yeah.
stuck 3 months,
Yeah.
to believe that. But I think that's one of the hardest things that we ever have to try to work through is when we feel profoundly stuck, that it's just a phase. It will
Yeah.
change. You won't stay stuck forever.
Yeah.
But man, when you're in it, ain't easy.
It sucks. It can suck.
It really can.
Mm.
Yes, wholeheartedly.
So much, so much good stuff in what you're sharing, Glenn. But as we are talking about the hope, we started with the hope, right? Um, so one is kind of like deal with whatever, kind of like face with acceptance, whatever it's in front of you, and live it, heal it, feel it, right? And
Trust
don't
it.
resist,
Trust it.
trust it, trust the process, trust the moment. Um, but whenever you're thinking hope, what is hope for you?
Hmm. What is hope? My first thought was it's very connected to trust for me, but then
Mm,
I'm like, well, but it's different too. Like on some level, I trust that, well, okay, here's the difficult part. I can't say that I trust that humans are going to survive. I can't
mm,
say that I trust that everything is going to be okay, 100%. What I can say with 100% is that I trust that we're right, we're exactly where we need to be, and if we all make if we all are committed to our own healing and our own just not learning to not be hijacked by these things, by the hope comes in when we make the effort. We have to choose to heal. We have to choose to, I'm no longer going to be a victim or of my childhood stories and beliefs. I'm no longer going to, you know, just get caught up in identifying with these difficult things, that I actually can little by little, tiny, sometimes it's tiny, you don't feel any change and it can be so painful, but little by little just start to untangle ourselves from the stories, the emotions, just let it flow. And then little by little you start building new neural pathways. And I love that image for neuroscience that, you know, like the old stories from childhood, they're like these big, well-grooved, like super highways in the brain. They're the comfort zones. They're the places we're familiar with. So we're just like, yeah, we believe we know. We bypass just being present because our mind thinks it knows what to do. But as we start to face our feelings in the present and not be thinking about them and trying to judging them, little by little, we start forging new pathways, and they're not easy at first. I sometimes I imagine we have to grab our machete and go chop in the jungle and create these new pathways into this thick jungle. But little by little, we start creating pathways, and those pathways can, if you stay on the path, they start changing. How you start attracting different people, things start shifting in your life. And as if each of us can just do our part to do that, the hope comes in for me in the feeling, in the sense that if enough of us commit to I'm human, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to get mad at you, I'm going to do this, but I'm always going to come back to center, and come back to remembering my source and remembering that trust. Then little by little, the waves of healing start emanating. And I think we all are attuned to each other's vibration. And little by little, if enough of us do that work, it starts changing the vibration. And for me, if the place I find hope is in that idea, peace begins with me. And
Mm.
if enough of me's work on fighting the peace within them, then little by little, the small p piece that we each becomes has the potential to become a big p piece. And that's my Aquarius moon. You know, it's the John Lennon song Imagine. I'm really connected to John Lennon. He also had an Aquarius moon. But I feel like I'm not an idealist. I'm an absolutely a realist. But I also feel like we have to have ideals to strive for, to have hope. Like,
Mhm.
and so the hope for me comes from a belief that if enough people can do their work, we may still be able to well, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a little bit of a pessimist, and the words that come to my mind are, we may still be able to salvage our human future, or like, or at least, or another way I might say it is, we might still be able to evolve consciously to the next level of human evolution. Because I really don't know. If there's one analogy that has been a centerpiece of my belief system since 1992, when I first met Richard Tarnas, the founder of archetypal astrology. He was giving a talk at Powell's bookstore in Portland, Oregon, and about his newly released book, Passion of the Western Mind. And it's an amazing book about the history of Western thought. Um, and in the epilogue, he writes some things about that kind of address the modern life situation. And he actually calls it a little bit schizophrenic, you know. And I don't want to sidetrack into that, but like that, we as a human, we know there's something deeper, but we've lost the magic because science has taken away the magic. And um, we're kind of in this liminal in between space, not knowing what to think as a human. But so, and he actually talks about, are we gonna, what's the future gonna be for humanity? So when we had the Q&A, I had the opportunity to stand up and say, Mr. Tarnas, what what is, after doing all this decades of research in history about, what is your personal belief? Are we going to survive as a human species? Are we going to make it to the next level? And what he said has stuck with me ever since then. He was very thoughtful. He took a bit at he just sat, and then he said, you know, I think it's going to be a cliffhanger. And I was just like, wow. He's like, cliffhanger. They're the movies where you, it could go either way. You don't know how it's going to end until the very end. And he goes, I think we still have the potential to really create an incredible future for humanity, for ourselves. We still have the possibility, but we don't, it may not go that way. If enough of us getting stuck in our comfort zones and unwilling to face the flow of life, that's kind of, in doing so, learn to detach, unattach from these selfish beliefs, small s selfish, um, then I don't know. I really am not, I don't think that we are going to make it. But
Mm.
at the same time, one of the books that I'm working on is titled, well, at least I think it's the title I want to have. And it's, I I give REM credit for this, but it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. And that's sort of my personal message that, yeah, the world is ending. The world as we know it is ending. We don't know what's emerging. As you were saying on the roller coaster, can we ride that roller coaster and still love it and still enjoy it? And painful as it might be sometimes. You can't do this alone, by the way. It's so important when you're on this journey of healing, of growing. You need support. You need to be able to, sometimes there's times where your journey of learning to self-regulate in the trauma used from trauma language, where you just need co-regulation. You need to lean on somebody to help you remember your own regulation. So important. I cannot emphasize that enough. So this is not something you can, and we have to do this together. It's alone. but together.
Mm.
But I do think that if we can, if enough of us can learn to ride that roller coaster, to surf the waves, um, then little by little, we each of us acting on our own, there is no telling what could unfold. I think that humanity could have an incredible future if we could, but it starts with I mean, and I know I'm kind of a little philosophical thinker here, but it starts with our personal healing journey. There's nowhere else to start. You can only manage your own process. And so if I had one message, I would just try to remember that every tiny little piece of healing that you do, that I do, that any one of us does, is inseparable from global healing. You are when you choose to let your those painful feelings come up and come through you, and then release. You're not just healing yourself. It's a little tiny piece of the global. And if enough of us do that work on ourselves over time, we just I, I think we absolutely can change the future.
You know what? I love where we arrived with this message and your thoughts because it sounds to me like a hope it's actually a practice and doing the work and showing up. It's not coming out of nowhere. Oh, let's be hopeful, but it really requires some commitment, some dedication, some courage to show up, to do the work, to face those emotions, to face those waves, and kind of like learn to swim in those waters of change, right? It's a practice. It's where we began in a way, right? That hope, it's not just an idea, it's a practice. It's like a daily practice. And those little moments, as you mentioned before, where we are choosing from the place of the fear or from the place of the love. And I've been listening to you and I'm kind of like moved because this work is so dear to my heart as you know as well. And this picture of mycelium and fungi came to me as well because the mushrooms, they are like the mycelium is all connected and they exchange the information, right? So whenever you're like talking about those frequencies and how we interact with one another, I see it always like mycelium comes, to my mind and my heart as well, because it's like the song that we both love. We are all related, right? We are all walking, like swimming in those waters together, and we can choose whatever we are choosing to support one another and see another human being as, as you, as your brother, as your sister, or see it in a different way, see it in the separation. And I like where we arrived, Glenn, that it's hope is really is a practice. It's about doing the work. It's about changing the pathways, the neural paths that we have, right? It requires some effort in a way, right? So beautiful, beautiful message, and I loved what you shared. This thought that you had about like it's about remembering, right? Remembering who we are and remembering that we are all connected. And I feel like we have so much more to explore. So maybe we will create like a little series here to talk about some other topics because it sounds like there is so much more to talk about and to explore. And I want to warmly thank you from the bottom of my heart, Glenn, for your service, for the way you show up for this world and the work that you do. And you do it for over 30 years. And I know that you witness at different kinds of like forms of transformations and turbulent times. And I feel like we need wisdom of like people like you also to to swim in those waters with more trust, with more hope, with more faith. And I just want to really appreciate you as a human being and as a teacher and as a person who's like bringing so much hope for this world. And I would like to also invite you to share where people can find you. I know that you're doing the readings, you're writing your books, you're doing so many exciting things and projects. So if you can give us a little bit of insight, what's the best way to find you?
Sure. Well, there's a lot in work right now. I'm just like you are. I'm imminently going to be launching a new YouTube channel where I'm going to be exploring a lot of these topics on a regular basis. And I absolutely want to make sure that I get you in as a guest on that show too, because I think there's a synergy that happens whenever we talk that I experience of we never know where it's going to go, but it always goes someplace very interesting and very meaningful and help for me, hopeful and valuable. So yeah, I'm going to launch that channel soon. I'm getting so close. Because I live my life as a trusted process piece. So that'll happen soon. But my actual website is shiftingparadigms.com. And my astrology website is soul-astrology.com. And you could also find me leading anybody who's listening to this can try a free breathwork, in breathworkonline .com. Although, of course, if you're local to where you are, if you haven't done a session with Aga yet, I can't recommend her enough as well. Aga is one of our just amazing graduates of this training, and I'm just I feel really honored to have been invited to show up on your show today too. Um, but yeah, and yeah, I'm working on a few books, and they're getting closer and closer. I don't want to give you a definitive, but I certainly have goals to get them done soon. So there's two mainly that I'm working on, but we'll get to those soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for today, Glenn. And I will put the links below so people can find you easily. And yeah, just a big, big gratitude for you, for today's conversation, and for the wisdom that you share. Thank
It's
you
been
so
so
much.
much fun. Thank you. A pleasure to hang out and chat with you, Aga. So,
Thank you.
thank you.